We are opening the files today on what is arguably the most profound, completely unsolved puzzle in human history, a literal scientific cold case that spans millions of years. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to explore how our ancient ancestors made the practically impossible leap from total silence to the infinite, nonstop conversations we have today. Because think about this. Before humans built cities, wrote books, or created civilizations, they had one superpower that changed everything: language. And that is not an exaggeration. Spoken words were the ultimate catalyst for literally everything humanity has ever achieved. Without language, there's no shared history, no complex tool building, no society at all. It is the invisible thread that holds our entire culture together. But how exactly did we get it?
Let's dive into part 1, the silent superpower. To really understand the magnitude of this question, we have to step back millions of years into a harsh, totally unforgiving world. Early hominins had to survive, hunt, and protect one another, all without words. But they weren't completely mute. Scientists actually believe archaic humans communicated using physical gestures, really intense facial expressions, and primitive, emotion-driven grunts. Anthropologists even have a name for this pre-linguistic system used by species like Homo heidelbergensis. They call it Homo, which means communication was holistic, manipulative, multimodal, musical, and mimetic. Basically, it was all about imitating the environment and expressing immediate raw emotion. But crucially, there were no nouns, no verbs, zero true words.
Moving to part 2, animal calls versus human words. Now, the animal kingdom is absolutely full of intricate communication. Vervet monkeys, for example, have distinct alarm calls depending on whether they spot a leopard, an eagle, or a snake. Dolphins use highly complex clicks and whistles to navigate and contact each other. Birds sing these beautiful, elaborate songs. But researchers point out a really crucial limitation here. These systems are strictly bound to the immediate present. That vervet monkey, it only calls when the eagle is literally right there. A bird only sings to say, "I am a male in this territory right now." Animal calls are intrinsically reliable, instinctual, and completely tied to the present moment. And right here is the dividing line. Human language has a unique property called displacement. This means we can talk about the past, plan for the future, or discuss totally abstract myths, like a unicorn or a distant galaxy. Because human words are detached from immediate physical reality, they're actually cheap signals that can be easily faked. We can lie. So to evolve language, our ancestors required an unprecedented level of social trust that just doesn't exist in the wild for other primates.
Furthermore, we developed this unbelievable mental computation called recursion. This is the ability to take discrete elements, like individual words, and recombine them to create an infinite variety of new expressions. Animals literally cannot do this. They can't string concepts together to form unlimited statements. Recursion is the biological magic trick that makes human grammar possible.
Part 3, survival, gestures, and gossip. So what actually triggered this leap? What massive survival threat or intense social pressure pushed our silent ancestors to invent words in the first place? Well, we have a few major scientific suspects. There's the gestural theory, which suggests a shift from hand signs to vocalizations, the gossip and grooming hypothesis, Mother Reese, also known as the putting down the baby theory, and the strictly neurological from where to what theory. Let's investigate the most compelling clues here. The from where to what theory posits that language started out of pure necessity between a mother and her child. Step 1. Mothers and infants used basic contact calls if they were separated. Step 2. They added intonations to signal exactly how distressed they were. Step 3. Over time, improved vocal control led to unique sounds, or phonemes, being directly associated with specific objects or threats. And finally, step 4. These evolved into multisyllabic words and eventually fully structured sentences. It is an incredible theory showing how a simple cry for help could evolve into complex grammar. Then we have the gossip hypothesis. Primates build alliances by picking bugs out of each other's hair, physical grooming. But as human tribes grew larger to survive predators, physically grooming everyone in your social circle just took way too much time. So the theory goes, they developed vocal grooming. Yes, gossip. Chatting became a cheap, ultra-efficient way to bond, build trust, and maintain alliances, all while keeping your hands totally free to work. Part 4, the brain's imagination engine. But beyond just the social need, there had to be an unbelievable cognitive leap inside the physical human brain. Think about tool making for a second.
Roughly 1.8 million years ago, when our ancestors were crafting stone hand axes, they had to be able to close their eyes and imagine the finished shape within the raw stone before they ever struck it. If you can imagine a physical shape that isn't there, you can imagine an abstract concept. For instance, the word for tree has zero physical connection to an actual tree. But if a group of humans all imagine the exact same concept when a sound is made, you have the birth of language. Language at its core is an act of shared imagination. And this brings us to a biological mechanism called prefrontal synthesis. Some researchers propose what's called the Romulus and Remus hypothesis. It suggests that a random genetic mutation in a couple of children slowed down their brain maturation just enough to extend their critical learning period. This allowed their brains to develop the ability to voluntarily juxtapose mental objects, literally mixing and matching ideas inside their heads. They invented recursive elements, merged them with the primitive communication of their parents, and boom, a miraculous evolutionary breakthrough occurred. Modern, complex language was born. Part 5. The Ultimate Evolutionary Mystery. Now, despite all these brilliant theories, the absolute, precise origin of language remains a scientific cold case. And why is that? Well, because unlike an animal's femur or a skull, the delicate physical organs required for speech, your lungs, your vocal cords, your tongue, your diaphragm, they're all made of soft tissue. They do not fossilize. They decay without a single trace, leaving paleoanthropologists to essentially guess the shape of ancient throats based on surviving bones. And as you can imagine, that leaves a vast room for debate. However, we do have one massive genomic breakthrough. Genomic evidence shows that if all modern human populations across the globe possess the exact same core structural capacity for language, then that ability must have existed in our common ancestor before the first major human populations split and migrated away from each other. That pushes the timeline to at least 135,000 years ago. But consider the gap in the archaeological record here. The genetic capacity for language existed at least 135,000 years ago. But the earliest symbolic artifacts, things like engraved ochre and jewelry, they don't appear until roughly 100,000 years ago. This reveals a stunning truth. The internal mental capacity for language actually evolved first as a private cognitive tool for thought, long before humans regularly used it to create outward symbolic art. Part 6. Storytellers of Civilization. This brings us right to the modern world. Speech wasn't just some neat trick, it was the ultimate competitive advantage. It allowed Homo sapiens to plan for the future, to teach complex hunting strategies to the next generation without them having to learn everything by trial and error, and to outsurvive rival hominins like Neanderthals. Language enabled us to forge massive cooperative networks, establish laws, share religions, and build entire societies based entirely on mutual trust. Language turned humans from silent survivors into storytellers of civilization. Every single skyscraper, every rocket ship, every constitution, and every single relationship you have exists today because millions of years ago, our ancestors figured out how to share the invisible thoughts in their minds using just the air from their lungs. I want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder. What do you think was the first human word? Was it a warning, a name, a cry for a mother, or maybe a word for a tool? Think about that invisible leap the next time you're having a conversation. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.